Group Home Riches Study Course and Quick Start Guide. We are going into the fourth key mistake, and this one is going to be on tenant deposits. Before we were talking about tenant damages, and these two can be closely related, but they are different and can be absolutely disastrous for your business. And these are coming from the 23 Common Mistakes book that we have. So why this matters? Again, we don't live in a perfect world. Things are going to go wrong. People are going to lie. Some people are going to cheat. They're going to steal. That's just how it is. You can never completely eliminate bad things, and this just happens to be one of those bad things that people will try to pull on you. And here's the reality: you will get played if you're not careful here. You will get played, because you have to remember, a lot of these people who are living in these group homes, they have a lot less to lose than you do. Let me say that again. These people, they could die, and they're willing to die in many cases. They already have addictions. They might be focused on other things. So even if they have good intentions, when you talk with them on the phone or you meet them in person or whatever the case is, they might have good intentions and they might really want to pay to live in your group home, but they get that money and they're like, hey, you know what? I can spend this on feeding my addiction instead. So you have to be very aware of that and understand that if you're not careful, you will get played. And then the other thing is that this matters because of your cash flows. And we're going to get into this a little bit later, but if you don't do this right and get your deposits early on, it will mess up the cash flows of your business. And especially early on, this will really hurt you. And you want to reduce stress. You don't want this to be a completely stressful business. And if you don't get the tenant deposits under control, this will end up being just that, an extremely stressful business. I love this line. I think it comes from Michael Dell. And he says, trust but verify. Trust but verify. So, a lot of people, they might approach these group homes and they say, well, you know what? Just because of the population that I deal with, I'm not trusting anybody. But the reality is you can't do that, because if you just don't trust anybody, that means how are you going to have them living in your house? Are you going to have surveillance on them 24/7? It's just not realistic. You have to be able to trust to some degree. Oops. There we go. So tenants must prove themselves, and that's the trust but verify part. Make sure that they prove that they are worthy of being trusted. So this is the same as when you're hiring someone. You don't just hire someone willy-nilly. No, you trust what they're saying, but still go and verify it. If someone says, I did A, B, and C for my last company, say, okay, I trust that. And because I trust that, I'm going to go and verify it and make sure that that information is correct. That will make your life a heck of a lot easier. And you can never verify too many times. You have a tenant that you're not sure about, get in touch with someone else. Get in touch with someone who knows them. Talk with other people. Learn. Talk with your house leader. Like, figure out everything that you can about people so that you are not running into constant situations where people are trying to not pay you. So hospitals end up being full at the end of the month. And the reason hospitals end up being full at the end of the month is because there's a lot of people who, their current living situations, they don't want to pay rent, which is due on the 1st, so they move out, right? This is a big thing. They'll move out so that, okay, I don't have to pay rent. They'll find another place, and they will get out of paying the deposit. They'll get out of paying rent early. They'll make excuses. And then at the end of the month, when you're hounding them, they move out. They go to a shelter for a little bit. They go to the hospital, and then they just do the same thing over again. So there are people who they know how to play. They know how to play off of people's hearts. They know how to get sympathy from people. So you have to make sure you're stern here. And the result of not doing this, again, it can get ugly, just like the damages, because you can end up having people who never end up actually paying you, but yet they're living in your group home. And the problem is, it's not just like they're living and taking up space. They're also eating food. They're also using utilities. So you're losing a lot of money when this happens. And actually, one more thing I want to touch on, actually, with things getting ugly, is the cash flow. And so here's the thing with cash flow, just the basics. If you don't know cash flow, you always want to have cash on hand. But here's the problem. Let's say you have all you have 5 tenants all paying you $100. So you have $500 coming in, and you have $300 going out for expenses that month. But let's say the expenses are due on the 15th, but you're not getting paid by these people until the 15th. So really, literally on that day, you plan on getting paid and turning that money around and putting it out to bills. But let's say a bunch of your people don't pay you till the end of the month. Now you have a cash flow problem because you need to pay out money when you haven't even got it in yet. So you always want your cash to come in at the start of the month, and you want to try and get your bills to go out at the end of the month. So that's always a huge thing. It's always something worth negotiating with your vendors, getting them to say, hey, I will pay you on the 25th of every month instead of the 1st. And there are exceptions. One exception is working with the government. If you're working with the government, then if it's like it's kind of similar to Section 8 housing, or if you're doing SSD, SSDI, that money can come in at different situations, but you still need to verify with your tenants that they do qualify for those, and there's paperwork that they can show you to prove that they do. But you will end up getting paid at some different times. But also, if you do get onto the government program, it can be reliable. And then the other thing is long-term tenants. And, it's always tough talking about this one just because, you do want to have a heart to some degree, and everybody's different here. So, but if you have someone who's been living in one of your group homes for, let's say, 7 or 8 months, and they've always paid on time, and they have 1 month something bad comes up, again, trust their story. But then just verify with them. They've been living with you for a long time. They've proven themselves. But verify that they have some source of coming up with that money. And then have a final date where it's like, hey, after this date, no matter what you say, we have to go. So that they know that the pressure is seriously on. So here's what success looks like. Again, you have healthy cash flow. Healthy cash flow means that you always have cash on hand. You have money coming out after the money's already come in. Tenants know they must pay on time. There's no exceptions to this. Before they step 1 foot in that house, they already have a deposit down. They'll have the first month's rent. No problems. With no problems there, and then you're collecting month to month, and they know on the 1st is due, or there's going to be problems. And you never have to evict someone due to not paying a deposit. It's such a silly thing to have to go back and try and collect on, and then say they move in, they damage something, you have no deposit, so you have nothing to dip into, which again means you're losing money and it's hurting your own business. We're trying to run a profitable group home here. And again, these are all coming from our 23 common mistakes books. We're gonna lay out 10 for you, but there's still 13 more that you're gonna want to make sure that you're diving into.